Okay, we are live. I'm just going to give this a second while some of the platforms catch up. Things like LinkedIn are a little bit slow. Hello, everyone. You're all very welcome to this broadcast here on Fundraising Everywhere. My name is Simon Scriver. For those of you who don't know me, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I know you're very busy. I know there's a lot going on. Lots of people doing broadcasts, lots of information out there. Just massive overload, and so no pressure if you want to just go crawl up back in bed, because I mean that's where half of us want to be, isn't it? So you're very welcome today. Today we've got a panel discussion on face-to-face fundraising around the world. Obviously, it's a very, very strange time in every aspect of life and every aspect of fundraising, but face-to-face fundraising is obviously set up to take quite a big hit, potentially. In terms of how things are going. So if you joined us last week at Project Everyone, this was the free conference we put on with Salesforce. We ran a number of sessions around COVID-19 and around how nonprofits and fundraising are responding. And this was one of the really popular sessions in that. And especially for me, I really, really enjoyed this. We had an initial session at the conference last week. Because I'm an ex-face-to-facer. That's how I got started in fundraising. I started fundraising in Melbourne, Australia, on the street as a street fundraiser. So I'm particularly fascinated by this. We've also got a really, really good panel. So if you want to see the recording of that, that's still available. You can still go to fundraisingeverywhere.com/COVID-19 and register, and you'll get access to all the recordings and all the bonus downloads, including this initial session and discussion. But really, we didn't have enough time last week because there's so much to unpack in this. So we've opened up the airwaves to these face-to-faces from around the world to come on and chat about it. People anyone watching this is very welcome to ask a question. Wherever you're watching this, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, you can ask your question right there. It'll come through to us and we'll put it to the panel to see what they think. Otherwise, if you're watching this on Fundraising Everywhere TV at fundraisingeverywhere.com/TV, you can put in questions in the chat box below. They're all there. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to get started. You're sick of me. So I'm going to bring on, first of all, our host for the panel. This gentleman probably needs no introduction if you've been in fundraising at all. I first met him, God, I don't know, at IFC. It must have been like 10 years ago or something. But here is Daryl Upsall. Hello, Daryl.
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Thanks for everybody for checking in and listening. Great to see you, Simon.
Good to see you. I haven't seen you in ages. I was expecting to see you at IFC, and hopefully we still will. But let's see. Yeah, how are you getting on? Your lockdown?
Good. I'm here in Spain. We're into our 4th week of lockdown with at least 4 more. And in Spain, it's total lockdown, so it's not even going out of your front door to go for a walk. So we're doing well. Very busy.
Good. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about how you guys are adapting and how everyone around the world is adapting to this. Or not adapting. So I'm really looking forward to get the chat. So I'm not gonna keep you any longer. I'm gonna hand the mic over to you. I'm gonna bring in our guests, and I'll be backstage. So I'll see you later.
Thanks
a million, Daryl.
Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm Daryl Upsall. I've been a fundraiser for some 36 years and was part of the original team in Greenpeace that at least is blamed or considered for as founders of Face2Face as we know it today. We have a great panel joining us today. We have Roland from WWF International. Hi. We have Daniel from UNICEF International. We have Elspeth from Save the Children International, and Peter from the Austrian Fundraising Association, who I must remind you are the hosts of the completely sold out but amazing event that we're putting on in Austria, in Vienna, in later this year, in November. Fingers crossed that we're all able to get together for that one. For those that weren't on the broadcast, I didn't see the broadcast live last week or have seen it subsequently, I moderated a session where we asked this international, highly experienced panel a number of questions about how Face2Face is going for their organizations and around the world. We covered such topics as how obviously coronavirus, COVID-19 is affecting them, but how it's affecting their organizations in different parts of the world as they are operating across pretty much all continents. We asked about the innovations and the way in which they have been adapting prior to the lockdowns in various countries and how they are emerging in some markets as they are back live on the streets in some of the particularly Asian markets. And also we looked into how this has impacted on other fundraising channels, how there has been perhaps more greater integration of decision making and less thinking in the traditional silos that very often fundraising itself looks at itself, but organizationally is structured. So, fascinating discussion. I ask everybody who has not seen it to look at the original version. And meanwhile, let's just go back to the panel and ask for an update on a few issues. So, since we did our session nearly 2 weeks ago now in the recording, what has changed since? What has changed in your organization? Let's kick off with Elspeth. How have you changed your model?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, 2 weeks ago seems pretty much like a lifetime ago at the moment in these times. It seems like situations are definitely changing by hour. Where we were 2 weeks ago is that all our markets were closed. And that was pretty much like out of my 25 markets, 25 of them were closed. Right now we have Korea back open again, partially, but it's slowly moving up. So 2 weeks ago it was open by 15%. Now we're up to 60 and hoping to get out there again up to 100%. So that's the slimmer of good news. That's, positive news. Where else we've moved over the last 2 weeks is that at the beginning when we first spoke, we were looking to move our teams into telemarketing for face-to-face, and now we're in the process of finalizing that for a lot of markets. Half my markets are on the phones. Some other markets are in the process of moving over to the phones. And those markets that we couldn't move to the phones, we've found alternative solutions like either working in the office, or we've set up a full engagement program for them with daily trainings, virtual chats, newsletters, everything. So yeah, that's in a nutshell where we've moved to over 2 weeks.
Great. How about you, Daniel? UNICEF doing similar moves, I understand, probably?
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar at all. So we had 3 markets that had probably just got back out fundraising around 2 weeks ago: South Korea, Japan, and Hong Kong. Unfortunately, Hong Kong has now shut back down again. So that was on the 31st of March. We ceased fundraising, and that was due to increased cases of COVID-19. But actually, South Korea, being the fundraising beast that they are, they pretty much as of yesterday were back to 100% capacity in shopping centres, streets, etc. The productivity isn't quite as high as we'd like it to be, and that's partly due to the fact that there's just less people out there, but also there is a hesitancy we feel from people wanting to stop and engage with a face-to-face fundraiser for obvious reasons. But all of our fundraisers are back out, and we're trying to just get back to business as usual. And yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a headless chicken phase as well, where all of our markets were just in complete panic because a lot of our countries are so heavily reliant on face-to-face. We've got some regions, for instance, in Southeast Asia, where 80% of our new donors come through face-to-face, and so it's literally like cutting off our main artery, and so it's how do we manage that? How do we deal with it? How do we support the agencies? Can we support the agencies? What do we do with our in-house fundraisers? And so I think now we're being a little bit more pragmatic, and we are slowly but surely starting to work out ways of engaging our agencies, supporting our agencies, and a lot of that, as Elspeth says, is around transitioning face-to-face fundraisers over to telemarketing, because it's probably the easiest transferable set of skills. And so for the first time in their fundraising careers, face-to-face fundraisers actually get to sit down, which I think they're quite happy about. But yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at. I can go into more detail, but we've got an hour. So
fantastic. Roland, how about you? WWF, what's emerged in the last couple of weeks with you guys?
I guess our life is slightly different, at least the speed, as the other organizations, probably connected to the fact that our topic is different. So we're not working on humanitarian and health issues. Our mission is not connected to the well-being of humans, but rather the nature and animals. Therefore, I guess the situation does not change that rapidly day by day. Technical sense, we are in the more or less in the same position. We are doing face-to-face at the moment in 2 countries, Korea and Hong Kong. Every other markets are in suspension. And also, as many fundraisers, we could move over to telemarketing, either for acquisition or retention calls, thank you calls, whatever possible, just get them, keep them busy as possible. That is happening. Other than that, I think it's more just careful watching what's happening in the markets and getting ready to slowly start again, hopefully, in some markets. I would expect Asia is going to make a faster recovery than Europe, as in most of the Asian markets, the pandemic situation is more under control than currently in Europe, but we'll see.
Actually, that's a good lead into asking Peter from the Austrian Fundraising Association and from the conference. You've been preparing, I understand, some protocols and health best practice and safety issues for fundraisers in Austria when they go back into face-to-face. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please, Peter?
In Austria, at the moment, all shops are closed except supermarkets. But on Tuesday, the small shops will reopen, and step by step, the stores will be opened. And the big question is, when does face-to-face start again in Austria? And for that moment, we are preparing quality standards where the branch, with the standards, we want to start again face-to-face fundraising in public. So simple things like disinfection, protection shields, and these things. But we want to show that we are taking care on our staff and on public health.
I was fascinated, and I thought it was a joy to see that one of the first businesses that will reopen in Austria are going to be garden centres. And I think that's not only an interesting location for face-to-face fundraising, but actually it's a place that will bring joy to people, I think, as they can go out, buy plants, put flowers in the garden, add colour to their lives after lockdown. So I find that fascinating. We've had a question here, maybe directly and indirectly related to face-to-face, but how's staff recruitment? Simon at Toast Fundraisers asked, are people still looking for jobs? Are you finding it easier? Are people coming to you in the absence of face-to-face, but saying, in the future, can we join your team? Any thoughts on that, Danny?
Yeah, so you have to have face-to-face operations operating to want to recruit to them. And so that's a bit of a challenge in the fact that we've only got 2 out of our 48 markets currently live. However, that said, I was on the phone to James Greaves at Salesworks yesterday, who fundraised for us in South Korea, and he said that actually recruitment is great for them as they rebuild their teams after the slight pause in South Korea. And also, actually, shameless plug, we are just about to start recruiting for some senior team managers for our in-house team in India. Job's about to go live, so I'll be able to let you know in a bit more detail about that in a couple of weeks, maybe. But I imagine in these uncertain times, and given the reality that some face-to-face operations around the world are going to shut down and potentially not open back up again, that people will be looking for work in other operations.
Elspeth, how about you? Are you having people come to you saying, can we work with you in the future on your teams in street, door-to-door, or even management positions?
Yeah, we've had some markets that reported. Am I echoing badly?
No, you're okay.
No? Okay. Yeah, we've had some markets that reported that they got some messages and interest from people that had been laid off elsewhere. But like Danny is saying, like at the moment, our main principle, our main priority is really to retain the staff that we have. We've closed obviously everywhere, and we're moving all our teams into telemarketing or alternative options, and we're fighting very hard to do this for all our teams. So that's, like Danny was saying as well, for our agency teams, for our in-house teams. We're trialing everywhere to move them into telemarketing or other activities. So at the moment, I'm not looking for staff. I'm just trying to hold on to the staff I have. But I would think that once this is over, that there will be more people looking for work, because a lot of people will unfortunately have lost their job. Fundraising is generally quick to get into. You can train them up, you can scale up your face-to-face program. So I would think that, yes, there will be a bigger recruitment pool, but I would also think and be cautious about how quickly we go out there, to what extent we go out there, if we're going gradually out there. And like Peter was saying as well, like we need to be mindful of the quality control, but also of the public safety, our staff safety, of all the conditions that we put in place when we go back out there. So I think staff recruitment will be better from a face-to-face perspective, but at the same time, right now, not top of mind yet, but it's good for future.
Last time we spoke, we talked about, in the last crisis, obviously very different to this one, the economic one in 2008, how actually response rates and productivity of face-to-face and other fundraising channels rose. Is that something you're expecting to happen in the future? Roland, is that something you can expect at WWF based on past experience?
I think it's kind of a common sense that the donation industry, the donation market, is usually counter-cyclic to economic crises, and that's fueled by two facts. One is that this is a moment when people understand there are problems and they want to help, right? So it increases the emotional impact. At the same time, if the economic crisis is mild or medium, it does not affect everybody the same way in a country. Even when the unemployment was calmed up, there's still a far majority of people employed, which means there are people with cash and willingness and understanding to give more, right? This is what makes economic crises better for fundraising. But that's different for a long and deep economic crisis, when really a lot of people lose their jobs. And this one is different from the previous ones because now we are physically unable to do face-to-face. Even today, if the lockdown was not there, you could technically do face-to-face. You could do a lot of safety measures with the gloves and mask and everything, right? But normally there should be audience still out there, but you can't physically do it. So I think a lot will depend on how long the crisis will go on. If it will finish in like 2 months, as it's expected, so we may see revival in May or June, that will probably make a very, very heated market for the rest of the year. But if this all continues into the next year until the vaccination will be developed, that really will mean a lot of people losing their jobs, and probably that will completely undermine all our targets.
Yeah, certainly. I've been speaking to, somebody's got their microphone or their speaker on still. I've been speaking to people around the world in different channels of fundraising, and certainly at the moment, for example, generosity figures and ROIs that we've been seeing from direct response TV around the world have been going through the roof. I mean, really amazingly high return on investment, whether that's in Asia or in Europe or in North America. Likewise, with telephone fundraising response going up enormously, people really actually welcoming the conversation, which I think, as Danny mentioned last time, they probably will welcome the face-to-face conversation if we're out of this in late summer, autumn. And to answer the question about people looking for jobs, as some of you know, we do recruitment ourselves. I'm getting a lot of people posting jobs, looking for new senior staff, I must say, and a lot of people looking to transition jobs. I have a funny feeling this kind of crisis also gives people pause for reflection. What am I doing? Am I doing what I want to do? Even within the non-profit world, is there something else I prefer to be doing, and therefore putting feelers out for future opportunities? It's a very unusual time, but some things continue as usual. I've got a quick question here from Caroline. Caroline, asks, how are your face-to-face fundraisers responding when they go back out there in those countries where you're back in the field, like South Korea and Hong Kong, on those occasions they're out or back in again. How are people feeling? Are they giving you feedback themselves about their own safety, or how people talk to them any differently? Elspeth, I'll kick off with you if you don't mind, and then move on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so what I've heard, I haven't spoken to Korea this week, but what I heard initially from them is that people were excited to be back out there again. So they've been locked in their houses for a while. So they were quite open to speaking to people and to fundraisers. However, equally at the same time, they were also a little bit worried. So the sign-up rates definitely were not up to what they used to be. So I would say about 60%, if that. But also people were still reluctant to share, like, for example, iPads or pens or come too close. So we had to work around that with, like, for example, recording the approval or other ways, and obviously keeping the distance. So it's definitely a little bit different at the moment. It's a little bit more worried. People are a little bit more reserved. So I think with time, it will hopefully improve again. But at the moment, there's a certain sort of, not reluctance, but carefulness from people towards the fundraisers, and vice versa as well, I think.
Yeah, Danny?
Yeah, I suppose just to echo or mirror all of that, really. It's difficult for face-to-face teams because you've got these, face-to-face fundraisers are the activists of the organisations they represent, and they are so hungry to go out there and raise money. Especially we've got some huge targets, UNICEF ourselves at the moment, to supply water and sanitation and hygiene products to the world, and so these fundraisers are really urgent and eager to speak to members of the public to generate income, but at the same time trying to respect these social distancing measures and people's hesitancy, I suppose, to interact. So it's a balance, but we're definitely seeing the hunger from the fundraiser side, whilst trying to respect public needs.
Okay.
Concerns.
But very related, and I'll come to you, Roland, is I've got a question here from Luke. And he's saying, what measures do you think we can take to address the likely social distancing? So would that include messages on uniforms like keep your distance, which is kind of hard in a dialogue, or circles in which people can stand and keep distance, like a spot, and I guess a circle around that's 1.5 meters or whatever the measurement be? You've gone back into the field in Hong Kong, Roland. Did they take your colleagues any special precautions, make some differences in the way they kept distance or protected themselves and the public?
The distance is probably the most difficult to keep. There are other ways that are easier, like wear your mask, wear your gloves. There's a lot of effort in trying not to do physical connection during the sign-up, which means remote-less sign-up. Use the client's own phone for the sign-up, for example. That is helping. The distance is probably the hardest because the intimacy falls victim of the distance. And there is also another thing which I think is more important than creating the measures. It is keeping them. So within the first few days, we already observed a lot of we call it the breaching of the rules by the fundraisers. You just eat your food with your gloves on your hands because you're hungry, which means it's the theoretically contaminated gloves. Or you take off your mask with your glove on because you want to drink, and then you put the mask on again. You got your mask contaminated. So more or less, it's more risky for the fundraisers and the fundraisers themselves and the public view than the actual risk, because I think people keep distance much more than the fundraisers are disciplined.
Interesting. And do you think this will be different in Asia? I mean, I've had the good fortune to travel through most of the Asian countries and work in many of them. Take Japan, for example. You would never go up to a colleague necessarily or a stranger that you're introduced to and give them a big bear hug. It's just not the kind of culture. So it's much more from a distance, and even the handing of a card is distanced typically. Whereas in some of our cultures, I live in a Latin culture like Spain, it's very much hugging and physical, and like Italy and so forth. Is that going to be hard as we move into cultures back coming live, where people are it's just a common day occurrence that you touch each other? It's in a polite way and respectful way, but it's part of the communication. Is that going to be a challenge, do you think? Having to teach ourselves and our colleagues to hold back?
Yes. I think, without a doubt, fundraisers love to engage people, and especially in the European, Latin American markets. I mean, it's exactly part of what they do. But even in Southeast Asia, to have a really emotionally engaging conversation, you need to be a decent enough distance to be able to show them your facial expressions and have a great eye contact, etc. So it is going to be challenging, and I wonder whether, I suppose it's just going to take time until we can get back to that, because I don't think face-to-face can ever really work properly without that.
Right.
And so we do have to respect people's wants and needs, and try wherever possible, maybe by using advances in technology. So for example, in a lot of the shops that you're going into right now, they don't want cash, they want NFC payments, that you can do that with many fundraising platforms nowadays. So you can simply tap with your card. As Roland pointed out, you can get people to sign themselves up on their own device after scanning a QR code or tapping an NFC card with their own device. So there's definitely those things. But I think the face-to-face community will just want to get back to where we were as quickly as possible. But it's going to take time. I don't see face-to-face changing as we know it. It will just, I think that's my opinion anyway.
Interesting, Danny. You're almost more Latin than the rest of us. But that's also, you do that. That's actually putting you closer. It's hard to stop, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, another question following on from that is it's interesting. We talk about the NFC, and probably in all the countries we're at, they've increased the limit where you can pay without having to touch a keypad in supermarkets and shops. It's moved up to 50 euros from 20 here in Spain. Do you think in the first instance there might be a transition to saying, actually, we'll take a first payment because we can do that up to 50 euros, and then move towards either a digital conversion to monthly or a telephone conversion if people are still cautious about touching keypads, which, at least when I went to the supermarket yesterday, I bought a nice quantity of wine that knocked me over 50 euros, and therefore had to key in with my gloves on, of course. Any thoughts on that? Whether there'll be a transition period where even taking single gift for conversion will be part of the mix?
Anybody want to come in? To that?
Yeah, Elspeth.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a time where we sort of need to trial and test as well. And I think it's also very market dependent. But overall, I could definitely see opportunities there for maybe starting with a first off gift and then move on to the conversion on the backside. I think also this whole situation now has also highlighted that, contactless payments would be very useful for a lot of markets. And, I'm not plugging anybody in specifically here, but I'm just saying, like, we have not jumped on that wagon in Save the Children that much yet. Like, we're talking about it, obviously, we're looking into it, but at the same time, moving closer towards closing your markets, that would have made a difference at that time, because it would have taken away some of the objections from people of like taking a pen when we work on paper or taking the iPad or something. So I think this situation has definitely highlighted that contactless payments would be something really good to look at now for implementing later. But also talking about fundraisers, I think the training of your fundraisers is going to be key when you go out there as well, as in like training them on the safety measures, on the healthy measures for them and for the public, and what that means in their behavior. Fundraisers are, like Danny said, is like they're very excited. They want to go back out there, and it's the nature of the face-to-face channel. It is the personal nature of the channel that makes it work so well. But we need to make sure that the fundraisers know that you can't just go out to your old ways of fundraising. It's like you need to gradually go back into it. And that means we are responsible for that. We need to train them. We need to make them aware of the social distancing, of what it means in their way of approaching people, the stopping techniques, of how they're engaging with people, like the handshaking, which I'm not a big fan of anyway for the stopping techniques. Definitely, like you say, Daryl, I'm in Spain as well. Like, we love to hug and kiss people here. That's definitely a no-go at first. So I think it's our responsibility, and together with our suppliers, that we need to work on getting the fundraisers ready, like mentally, but also in knowing what they can and cannot do in the situations. And then I think eventually we'll get better. I do believe, and I'm very positive here, that Face2Face is a channel that will always bounce back and always land on its feet. It's the nature of the channel. It's the agility of the people in it, like us. But I think it takes a lot of guidance from our side and our responsibility to make sure that we guide this back into the market in the way that's appropriate and safe for everybody.
Yeah. Roland, if I recall, WWF was one of the very first organizations to do face-to-face in China. I remember when I was at the conference in Shenzhen a few years back, I met your colleagues there. You were just restructuring the organization in China, becoming a Chinese organization, more of a Congo. In China, whenever I take out my cell phone, people just take one look, even though it's Chinese, and laugh at it because the apps are so archaic compared to in the West compared to China. So, you know, the WeChat is the payment, is the social media, is the... In China, have you been doing face-to-face where there is absolutely contactless sign-ups at all?
It was actually, it could be completely contactless because we can use the phone of the fundraiser. But actually, we already stopped face-to-face way before the crisis started last year. It's linked to more like licenses and admin issues. Yeah. And I don't think it's anywhere near that we'll restart again.
Okay.
There, but I do believe technology is not the number one issue here, because that's always the easy part to solve. Everybody carries a mobile phone. A lot of people have a tablet with. You still have a glove if you need to touch something. I don't think that's the real prevention. There's a psychological prevention in our heads, which is of course fueled by government decrees. This needs to be solved, and I do believe that humankind has a very short memory. So when the crisis is there, then we all know it, and we try to keep it. As soon as the pandemic, when the health crisis will be over, I think Spain and Italy will be back hugging each other very, very fast, while Korea and Japan is still going to keep the same distance as they used to. So I think it's a time game that we're playing now. We're trying various solutions with the tablets and other things, which are nothing new, right? So let's be honest. All these trials with NFC chips, with the Chinese apps and everything, this has been part of our schedule for the last 2-3 years anyway. We might speed it up a little bit, but it's just to eat the time until the market is back into its normal shape.
It's interesting. I worked at the heart of the last pandemic. I worked very at the core of the HIV/AIDS crisis, set up the first major fundraising programs in Europe for that when I was working for Terence Higgins Trust, an HIV/AIDS charity. Of course, the irony there was it was the hug that Princess Diana gave to a dying man in a hospice that changed the perception of the pandemic. And yes, go out and hug somebody with HIV/AIDS. It's kind of... This pandemic is the opposite. Whatever you do right now, do not hug anybody with coronavirus. To be frank, Diana did change global behavior. Perhaps what our leaders and public figures this time are doing are not changing it or not reinforcing the messages that we would like. So, you know, Trump will carry on doing whatever he wants to do. And as we know, Boris Johnson did the same, and other leaders in Brazil continue. Peter, can I just bring in there? You're bringing these new ideas or the protocols, safety measures, and so forth in Austria. Is there something you can share with us that may be unusual and may be helpful for other people to say, oh, that's an unusual way of moving forward? Is there something there that you think is quite innovative?
Yeah, we are at the beginning. So we've just discussed today the basic things. I have to look at my notes. It's the disinfection, but the protection shields, but also be mind the age of the donors. So don't contact older people from 50 or 60 on. This is a problem at door to door because you don't know who is in this flat, in this house. It's easier on the street. Yes, yeah, but we are at the beginning, and we want to start face-to-face fundraising in Austria again as branch, and not every organization and every supplier decides by themselves. And we, as Austrian Fundraising Association, want to make also a recommendation on the start and a sort of a rule book, and with quality standards. And also, we want to coordinate the organizations and the suppliers, because there's also a scenario that too many teams will be on the streets, and this will cause problems in the classic quality standards.
That's interesting. It's an interesting issue around communications, isn't it? When we launched Face2Face in Austria back in the 1990s, the first thing we did was, before we started, held a press conference to explain how Face2Face works, and it didn't stop the church protesting to government that we were stealing their money. But nevertheless, it was about well, we were the only charity, Greenpeace, but it was about communicating what's going to go forward. Now, I know you as a group, Roland, Elspeth, Daniel, and your counterparts in many other international non-profits are in regular and consistent communication, sharing, which is a beautiful product, if you like, of collaboration in these times. Are any of you working towards a collective communication strategy that would, at a certain point, maybe by country or by region, say, we listed very powerful names in the public's mind, many of you have decided to go back and do face-to-face street, and these are our protocols, and this is why we feel it's safe. Any thoughts on that? I'll kick off there with Daniel.
So we do actually already have a global group. So that's UNICEF, Save the Children, WWF, SOS, Oxfam, UNHCR, CARE. I'm sure there's a few others, but we already speak on a regular basis, and we try to be aligned wherever possible, and are constantly sharing how we all operate, because I think what's great for one is going to benefit another. But on that question, no, it's not even a topic we've even started to discuss in terms of being aligned in our approach when we do get back out. But I think it's an interesting point you raise, and think that will now be added to the agenda of the next meeting.
Yeah, Elspeth, you agree?
Yeah, totally. I just went like this because I usually send out the agendas for the meetings. So noted, Danny. Yeah, no, I fully agree with Will, and like what you were saying, Daryl, I have been really amazed, and in a really good positive way, how well we all work together on an international playing field, and how that's filtering through to our national markets as well. I know that sometimes it seems like we're working against each other, or sometimes it feels that way, but at the same time, we have this international group. Normally we speak like every 6 weeks or something like that about matters that are important at that time or that have been playing, but during this crisis, we speak every week, and it's literally with an hour notice. When there's another urgent something that comes up, that we put in an extra call. We have a WhatsApp group, so we talk frequently, and we've all together worked through this for each of us, as in like how we're dealing with our suppliers, like how can we keep our staff in place, how can we retain our teams, like what is UNICEF doing and what is SAFE doing, and how can we learn from each other. So we're all like sharing in this group and all coming up as in like, these are the challenges that we're having. How can we collectively go back to that? So for me, it's been really useful, and I think it's fantastic to see that communication and collective approach and coordination between us. But it's also filtering through to my markets, because every week on actually Thursday, I have my meetings with all my face-to-face managers. So 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, so all time zones can join. And whatever I can share from the meetings that I have with the other NGOs, I share that with them as like, UNICEF is doing this, why are we not thinking about that? Or Amnesty has done this, or, Oxfam had an amazing feedback on Twitter from one of their donors who the face-to-face team's loyalty calls. That's what I shared in a group this morning. Like, guys, we need to get onto this. This is what's working, but vice versa as well. So it's working really well, and our communal stand or collective approach as well with regards to compensation asks, that has also worked in a number of markets, or pretty much in all markets. So I would definitely be very open to that, to have some sort of collective like agreement or approach to this once this is all over. But like Danny is saying, right now hasn't been on the agenda yet, but noted, it will be on one of the next ones.
And actually, just to add to that, UNICEF, we created a kind of a fundraiser best practice guide for all frontline fundraisers in terms of how they should be behaving, and some considerations around alcohol wipes and wiping your tablets, and that was shared with all organizations, and I believe that went out and all fundraisers started using that. So we are definitely collaborating on this.
Yeah, so Danny, we adapted that for Save the Children, and that has gone out to all our markets with, instead of your branding, the Safe branding on it. But the template was yours.
I think while you guys were talking, one thing came to me. We're still a little bit reactive. We collaborate really well together, but in this pandemic, we are reactive. We're not proactive enough. It reminds me to the beginning of the crisis. When it started, first thought was, okay, this is big in China, very difficult, but it's far. Then bing, it starts everywhere. And then we thought for face-to-face, it means we have to look for sanitizers and gloves. And bing, in a day or two, markets are all shut down, right? And then we realize, oh my God, what do we do with the fundraisers? Oh, we have to do telemarketing. So we kind of run after the actual life actions and try to find solutions. It's like a fire extinguishment. And this is probably why, Dara, you're absolutely right asking, what's your restart strategy? And so far we only see, okay, let's put the gloves on and use the tablets and wipe them and do face-to-face again, because we are not proactive enough, and we were not thinking of the communication strategy which should support the restart of face-to-face. So I think it's completely the right time and the right question.
And interestingly, if I can come in there for Peter, the Austrian Fundraising Association very much been a very active player for many years in the European Fundraising Association. It was also very active in the revision of the International Statement of Fundraising Ethics and Values and Principles, which I hope you're all very familiar with, and everybody listening here is familiar with. If not, go to your National Fundraising Association and find the link. Is this a point at which, working with organizations like those in this group, that the EFA should also be working together to make sure there's perhaps a European-wide common communication strategy around face-to-face as and when it reopens, and likewise working with your equivalent, the FIA in Australia, the AFP in USA, Canada, and Mexico, and so forth? Is there a value in having a collaborative joint communications message, at least, as we were hoping to do anyway at the International Face-to-Face Conference prior to this coming out? The reason being is because sometimes it takes time for those messages to filter through different countries, different markets, smaller organizations, maybe not so interconnected as the IMPO on this call. Peter, what do you think about that?
Yeah, collaboration bigger than ever. And also through the fundraising associations, especially in Germany and Switzerland, we're in contact, but also European-wide. Our businesses are changing. Everything goes online, and we are in permanent contact at the moment.
Okay. We're running out of time, but I just want to pick up. Vaughan's been patiently waiting with a question about, and it kind of got alluded to, is there a different way of moving back into the market, whether it's door to door, in the streets, public spaces, private sites? Are you thinking of phasing in one area before the other, or are there significant differences how you approach these? Roland, take you in there first.
I think face-to-face on street or shopping malls is always easier to do, even without the pandemic, for two reasons. One is because it requires, in a way, less training. In a simple way, in a shopping mall, you can pick your target. At a door, you ring the bell, and whoever opens, you have to speak to, right? So you have to be ready for any circumstances. Second, the supervision is easier to organize. The team leaders are in better control in a shopping mall. Now, in the pandemic situation, when the health care, the safety is important, and the mask and the gloves and the hygiene stuff is important, you really need your team leaders to watch out for the team, which again is easier on the street. So I think this is why for us there was no question where we start. It's going to be streets and venues rather than door to door. If the question was about the public's perception, I guess that's the hardest to tell, because door to door is very sensitive to the local conditions, right? In certain countries, it's easy to ring the bell. In some countries, you don't even get to the bell because there's security guards and barbed wires and everything. So in countries where there's a health concern and there is also a criminal issue, you probably really won't get the doors opened for you. That's my first feeling.
It's interesting. So I mean, door to door is very much a European thing anyway. It doesn't for me. It doesn't really exist in Latin America. The majority of our fundraising is street or event, and it's the same in Southeast Asia as well. So it's very much a European thing. But interestingly, when this first started, we immediately transitioned our street and event fundraisers over to door to door. Because we felt in a street location or in a shopping center location, there's essentially more human interaction. So from a health point of view, it's higher risk. Door to door, there's less human interaction, and it's easier to keep a distance as well. So I can stand 1.5 meters, 2 meters away from you, but there's not hundreds of people walking around me. So you can still have that one-on-one conversation without a lot of distraction going on around you. So I think door to door, yes, I think it's in a COVID-19 environment, it's probably the safest form of fundraising, but it's limited geographically to where we can do it. And there is also a certain skill set as well. So there are certain people who just don't want to do door to door, or certain agencies where it's just not their speciality. So it's going to be interesting to see how people reproach this in Europe and when we go back to it. But I would say, in answer to your question, Vaughan, door to door for me is safer in a COVID-19 environment.
Interesting. Elspeth.
Yeah, very similar as well. We also found that the shopping centers fundraising did not work anymore, or it just didn't work out just before markets closed. So we also moved a lot of activities into door to door. The fundraisers reported that they felt more comfortable with it as well, and that people at the door were more open to them than people in the shopping centers were. I think when we go back out there, we just need to really look at our programs and our channels, and we need to diversify across the sub channels. We need to move things around, because, for example, a lot of our private sites have been cancelled for the next many months. Even though if we are able to go back out there, like here in Spain, if they say they might relax the rules a little by the end of April, and whenever we are really free again, I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be later that we get our sites back, because we have many countries where all our private sites are cancelled for the next months and months to come. So that means there's going to be more people on the street. There's going to be more fundraisers at the door. But I think across all of us, whether you are a charity or an agency or the PFRA or the PFFA or PFRA, all the organizations like the Austrian Fundraising Association, all of us, I think we need to keep that in mind to get the quality of the channel in mind as well, and to get to work on to make sure that people are not bombarded on the streets, or that they not have a fundraiser every 2 minutes on the door from different organizations, because we're all going to have our private sites cancelled. So I think collectively across all the fundraising organizations and everybody that has anything to do in it or has a fundraiser wherever, we need to work together on the quality control of the channel, of the fundraising, of the fundraisers, and of the locations, because otherwise we are going to kill our own channel. But we can avoid that, but we need to work together. But we need to start that now, I say.
Yeah, and just to add to that, actually, because I think, right now there's more eyes on Face2Face than there ever was in the history of the channel, because it's been impacted so heavily. So I think it's a real opportunity to reflect on Face2Face as a channel and really consider what we want it to look like when we do go back out. So maybe there's certain markets where it's not producing the best ROI, or certain in-house teams that need serious optimization, or certain KPIs that we need to stop focusing on and shift to focusing on others, because I think people are going to be reviewing how they invest in this channel moving forwards, and so we want to make sure that those investments deliver the best return they can, and in doing that we need to make sure that we come out with the strongest operations possible. And so it's a great time to reflect.
Absolutely.
I think this is also just one point in addition to that, like internally for our own organizations, like a lot of our markets have moved budget from Face2Face to digital to DRTV to other channels. So I think we need to come back with a really good plan as well. It's like when we go back out there, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're globally or nationally, how we're both organizing this and working this together across the industry. And this is what I can deliver for you. This is how I'm going to guarantee our reputation, our quality, because we also need to sell this back into our own organization. It's like you've moved budget out, but when we go back out there, we need it back, or we need, budget to continue our channel or to build it back up. So I think this is really where we need to make sure that we have a quality program in place to make sure that externally as well as internally it still realizes the potential of the channel and the huge income that we can bring in if we do it right.
Interestingly, I have to say, I mentioned at the outset that digital and DRTV are doing very well at the moment, especially in terms of return on investment. Part of the reason is, and I'm being told this again across the world, is that the big corporations are pulling out of advertising. So what's the point of putting a car advert on primetime TV when nobody can even go to a showroom, or selling house furniture when you're not allowed to go out of your home to buy furniture? So right now, DRTV is benefiting very much, as is digital, from the non-presence or competition for space on those channels. Indeed, I think it was actually in Oslo, a German organization, got 1,000 new monthly donors they didn't expect, because actually one of their agency's commercial clients just handed over a whole wave of free advertising without even telling them, and they got 1,000 new monthly donors. When people get back to be able to go to the high street, to the malls, to the big shops, I suspect the adverts will bounce back. TV will be very expensive again, and suddenly there may well be a shift from digital TV and back in budgets into Face2Face. Any thoughts on that, Roland?
Yeah, that's probably true. Though if I was a corporate, I would exactly run my campaign today, right? It really, the question is whether you're interested in short-term sales or long-term loyalty building. And I guess this is today very much a time for the corporates to build long-term relationships. For us, it's the opportunity to do short-term, lower cost acquisition on digital and DRTV. Though again, I think it really depends on your work area. For humanitarian organizations, health organizations, probably this is really the boom time. For us, it's still question how people react to non-virus related topics today, and it really differs market by market. If you compare even Germany to Italy, where the level of crisis is different, not necessarily the number of victims are different, casualties are different, but the public feeling is different. the response rates are very different. Like in Italy, for us, not even thinking of doing DRTV today, while Germany is still an open market for an environmental organization.
Yeah. I'm also hearing, by the way, organizations dealing with cats and dogs in many countries are doing exceptionally well. And it'll be interesting down the line what analysis that is. Is it because actually when you're locked in your house, actually the cat and the dog and those other pet-related animals suddenly are the comfort for you in times of crisis? Roland, you have a thought there?
So yeah, so the domestic animals and the wildlife doesn't move on the same direction. It's actually, let's say, it's a different industry in itself, and the psychology is different. Domestic animals are very important in Europe. It's not a topic, not that much a topic for Asia, for example. At the same time, the feeling of crisis is different, right? Because the domesticated animals, especially dog shelters, when crisis is there, everybody immediately understands the dogs will run out of food. So I have to donate a dog shelter. At the same time, we get from a lot of mostly major donors, like, environment is not a risk anymore. Come on, look around, there are no flights. Shipping industry leaders say, my boats are all stationary, there is no emission. So climate, thank you, very well, right? So what are you talking about? Yeah, your problem doesn't exist. That's what I get, right? Why the dog shelters are still running high.
No, I agree. We're running out of time, and Danny, I think, funny enough, you've preempted what I'm going to ask. I wanted to ask you to use the last 2 minutes here to put a message to the people who are at the heart of all this. I think I'd love to hear a message from all of you to go out to those face-to-face fundraisers who are either currently working, transitioning into other roles, looking forward to going back to work. But I'd like to hear from each of you the very frontline people, the fundraisers that without them face-to-face fundraising could not happen. And as you prompted that comment, Danny, what's your message to face-to-face fundraisers out there?
I think first it's to every single organisation that's used face-to-face fundraisers is to not forget about them. You know, a lot of them right now are at home without a job, or maybe waiting to be transitioned into something new, and we can't just leave them sat there. You know, they've worked really hard for us in the past, and we need to work hard for them now. We need to show them that we still care about them, that we still want to engage them, we want to keep their skills sharp. This is a great opportunity to upskill, to do fantastic trainings, all those wonderful different training ideas that you never had the time to deliver. Now is the time to do it, because you are so important to us. I mean, you literally hold up so many of the biggest organizations across the world through the amount of individual donors that you bring in. So we do care about you, and we need to show, all organizations really need to show that we care about you. You're awesome.
Thanks, Danny. Elspeth, briefly, we are seconds away from Simon coming in and telling me off for not keeping to time.
Okay, well, very briefly then, I just wanted to say to all our face-to-face fundraisers, both for Save Directly and for agencies, like, you are at the core of everything that we do. As like, without you, we would not have a lot of the money that we bring in to do our programs. So not many people can actually go home at night and tell their family or their partner or their children, like, I saved children today, but our face-to-face fundraisers can actually do that. And I think that is a job that is so important, and we all need to look after you. Like Danny is saying, we're doing everything about it to look after you right now, and that comes from us and our suppliers, and we're working together on that. So for me, you are at the heart of the organization, and you rock.
Thank you. Roland.
There are sayings in WWF. When somebody joins the organization, we usually say, welcome to the Panda family. When somebody is leaving, we say, once a Panda, always a Panda. And I think those messages are even more important today. So that's what I think. You are part of our family, and you stay our part of family.
Thank you very much. I fully endorse all of that. I think we should applaud collectively our face-to-face fundraisers worldwide. Thank you. Peter, one last chance to comment that we have this great conference coming up, and I think we collectively on this group need to think how we can actually bring it to a wider audience in November, because we know we're sold out at the moment, and maybe if there's something we can do in the interim to at least help further the discussion and support the fundraisers and the agencies and the people involved in face-to-face. Over to you, Peter, and then I think Simon's going to say goodbye and thank you.
Yeah, we will also focus at the International Face-to-Face Congress on COVID-19 and how organizations and suppliers are dealing with the situations. So if you have an idea for a workshop or a slot, please write us. Everything is on our website, f2f-fundraising.com.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, panel. Thank you for your time again, your enthusiasm. And thank you to all your teams for the fantastic work you're doing around the world. You're saving lives, you're saving the wildlife, you're saving environment. You are working for the people in these times of crisis. Thank you very much indeed. Simon.
Hello, guys. Thank you very much for that. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that. And thanks for everyone who was commenting and asking questions in the comments box. Thank you for that. I hope we got to all of your questions. Just want to say, guys, thank you very much. I know you're all busy and stressed, and so thanks for taking the time out and sharing your thoughts with us. I learned a lot. It was really, really interesting. I think, you know, what Daniel said, I think especially resonated with me, that it's like, you know, to send our love and to send our support to the face-to-faces. It's a tough job at the best of times. You know, it's the hardest and best job I've ever done, like the best and worst and hardest and funnest job I've ever done. And so, yeah, I know for those people going through that, it's good to offer support. And I think you make an excellent point that now's the time to upskill. And as face-to-faces, we never have time to do the training we want. We never have time to update our systems and our processes and look after our staff. And I think now is the time to do that. You know, we gotta keep hold of these guys because they're great at what they do. They're amazing. So yeah. And to you guys, I don't know if you hear it enough, but you're doing a great job and keep it up. And I hope you guys look after yourself.
Thanks, Simon.
Right.
All right, guys. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say goodbye to you all now. Thank you very much, Elspeth. Thank you very much, Daniel, Peter, Roland, and Daryl. I'm transmorgifying Daryl and Daniel. But take care, guys. We'll talk to you again. And thanks again for making the time for us. Take care.
Totally my pleasure. See ya. Bye.
See you now. Okay, so we're going to say goodbye to our face-to-faces, if I can get them out. And yeah, that was brilliant. That was really interesting. Hopefully we can get them back on for another chat. You'll see at the bottom of the screen the web address of the face-to-face conference. This is the first International Face-to-Face Fundraising Congress. Really worth checking out. Obviously, it's sold out. But I imagine they might be looking at, you know, additional events down the road. I might be looking at virtual elements. You know, let's see what happens. But this is a conference that I'm definitely keeping an eye on, and I still hope to get to, even though it's sold out. I'm gonna demand a ticket now that we've hosted this. But I think it'll be great. It's great to see face-to-face conferences actually happening. So do check that out. f2f-fundraising.com, and there's more details there. That's it. I'm going to wrap up. If you want to know more about the conference, obviously go to there. If you want to know more about fundraising everywhere, if you haven't seen us before, then feel free to click around the site, or you'll see a button underneath to join up for our mailing list. We've got lots of free events coming up, lots of premium events coming up. We've got, yeah, all sorts of things. So please do feel free to check those out. Do feel free to get on the mailing list. And if you're still lonely and still bored and you're an isolated fundraiser and you're maybe things are weighing heavy on you, then check out our networking rooms. If you go to fundraisingeverywhere.com/rooms, we have always open, always free virtual networking rooms, virtual social spaces, and virtual shared working spaces. So if you just want to see if there's any other fundraisers around or any other nonprofit around, go to fundraisingeverywhere.com/rooms. And you might find someone interesting to chat to. Why should we stop networking just because face-to-face is on hold during all this? I don't know. That's it. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you again very much for joining us. I really enjoyed that. I miss my face-to-face days. It was, what was it? It was like 16 or 17 years ago that I started as a face-to-facer on the streets of Melbourne. Oh my God. Okay, you're sick of it. Thank you again, everyone. I'm going to say goodbye to you all. We'll see you again for the next broadcast. Again, get on our mailing list, follow our social to find out when those next events are coming up. But we'll be back live soon. Thank you.